Imagine a Game of Thrones where the crown was the ultimate prize, but a single misstep meant losing your head. Literally. This is the story of a king who rewrote his country's religion, defied an empire, and shattered ancient traditions, all for one simple, impossible desire: the love of a woman and the son she could not give him. A king who went through 6 queens in a deadly quest, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and a legacy written in blood and betrayal. What kind of man could do such a thing? And what kind of women dared to marry him? King Henry VIII's 6 marriages form a brutal and relentless chronology, a 20-year campaign where personal desire and political necessity fused into a single, devastating force. His first union with Catherine of Aragon was, for a time, a successful partnership that spanned over 2 decades. Yet, the failure to produce a surviving male heir festered in the king's mind, transforming a diplomatic partnership into a personal prison. This was not merely a private disappointment, but a dynastic crisis that threatened to extinguish the fledgling Tudor line. His solution was as radical as it was ruthless. To discard Catherine, he needed to annul their marriage, a move the Pope in Rome steadfastly refused. Henry's response was to shatter 1,000 years of religious tradition in England. He engineered a break from the Catholic Church, declaring himself the supreme head of a new Church of England, a monumental act that placed his own authority above that of God's own vicar on earth. This granted him the power to annul his own marriage, a staggering demonstration of a king's will becoming law. His second marriage to Anne Boleyn was born from this revolutionary act, a passionate and politically charged union that promised the son he so desperately craved. Yet when Anne, too, delivered a daughter and subsequently suffered a miscarriage that lost a male fetus, Henry's favor turned to fury. The charming and intelligent queen was swiftly transformed into a threat. Accused of adultery, incest, and treason in a spectacular show trial, she was executed to clear the path for a new wife. His third marriage to Jane Seymour was a deliberate contrast. She was the submissive and pale opposite of the fiery Anne. Her success in bearing a son, Edward, secured her place in Henry's heart as his only true wife, though her death from postnatal complications robbed him of that comfort. The latter 3 marriages reveal a king descending into unpredictable tyranny. Anne of Cleves was rejected for her appearance and cast aside as a sister. The youthful Catherine Howard provided a brief illusion of regained youth before her alleged infidelities sent her to the same block as her cousin Anne. Finally, the pragmatic Catherine Parr survived the ailing monarch not through passion, but by acting as his nurse and carefully navigating his volatile temper, a testament to the sheer survival skill required to outlast the king's consuming obsessions. The iconic rhyme, divorced, beheaded, stayed divorced, beheaded, survived, serves as perhaps the most enduring mnemonic in English history, perfectly encapsulating the terrifying roller coaster of fates that awaited Henry VI's queens. Yet, behind its sing-song simplicity lies a world of legal manipulation, brutal politics, and profound human tragedy. The first, divorced, refers to Catherine of Aragon, though this is a modern simplification. Her marriage was actually annulled, declared invalid from its inception, based on Henry's claim that it was against divine law for him to have married his brother's widow. This theological argument, manufactured to serve the king's desperate need for a new wife, cost Catherine her title, her dignity, and any legitimate connection to her daughter, Mary, who was suddenly declared a bastard. The subsequent, beheaded, belongs to Anne Boleyn, the woman for whom Henry had moved heaven and earth. Her fall was as swift as her rise. After failing to produce a male heir and having suffered a disastrous miscarriage, she found herself ensnared in a web of conspiracy woven by Thomas Cromwell. The charges of adultery, incest, and treason were almost certainly fabricated, a political necessity to remove a queen who had become a liability and to make way for her replacement. Her execution by a French swordsman, a final mercy from the king, sent a shockwave through Europe, demonstrating that no one, not even a queen, was safe from Henry's will. The poignant deed marks Jane Seymour, the only queen to give Henry the male heir he so obsessively sought. Her death from puerperal fever just days after the birth of the future Edward VI cemented her status in Henry's mind as the perfect, submissive wife, the only one he would later request to be buried beside. The second, divorced, is Anne of Cleves, whose marriage was another annulment, this time on the grounds of non-consummation and a pre-contract. Henry, having found her physically disagreeable and their relationship awkward, used the legal loophole to extricate himself from a politically advantageous but personally distasteful union. The final, beheaded, was Catherine Howard, the young, vivacious cousin of Anne Boleyn. Her fate was a grim echo of the past, but where Anne's crimes were likely invented, Catherine's indiscretions, both before and possibly during her marriage, were real. Her youth and naivety were no match for the ruthless politics of the court, and her execution solidified Henry's reputation as a tyrant who would sacrifice even a teenager he called his rose without a thorn to protect his honor. Finally, the triumphant, survived, belongs to Catherine Parr, the twice widowed intellectual who outlasted the king not through luck, but through shrewd intelligence. She acted as his nurse, managed his volatile temper, and narrowly escaped arrest herself by skillfully submitting to his theological superiority, ultimately becoming the only one to emerge from the marriage with her life and freedom intact. The rhyme, therefore, is not just a list of fates, but a stark summary of the lethal game of chance that was being Queen of England. Henry VIII's behavior toward his final 4 wives reveals a dramatic and unsettling evolution in his character, showcasing a descent from calculated political strategy to unchecked tyrannical impulse. Following the traumatic execution of Anne Boleyn, his marriage to Jane Seymour represented a retreat into traditionalism and a search for stability. Jane was everything Anne was not: meek, submissive, and politically unobtrusive. Henry genuinely cherished her, but this affection was intrinsically tied to her success in providing him with a male heir. Her death after giving birth to Edward VI left him genuinely grief-stricken. He wore mourning black for months and later requested to be buried beside her, forever memorializing her as the only wife who fulfilled her ultimate dynastic duty. However, this profound personal loss did not soften him. Instead, it seemed to accelerate his emotional decay, making his subsequent choices increasingly volatile and self-centered. His union with Anne of Cleves was a stark departure, a purely political match orchestrated by his minister, Thomas Cromwell. Henry's reaction upon meeting her was visceral and cruel. He felt physically repulsed, infamously comparing her to a Flanders mare. His inability to consummate the marriage was as much about his own aging body and psychological state as it was about her appearance. The swift annulment that followed demonstrated his absolute power to discard anything, even a strategic international alliance, that personally displeased him. Yet, the humiliation he felt from this episode fueled a reckless and desperate need to reassert his virility. This led directly to his marriage to the teenage Catherine Howard. In her youth and vivacity, he saw a reflection of his own lost youth. His initial infatuation was intense, showering her with gifts and affection, but it was built on a fantasy. When evidence of her pre-marital sexual history and potential infidelity emerged, his devotion transformed into a vicious, narcissistic rage. The betrayal was not just personal but public, and he responded with the same brutal finality he had used on Anne Boleyn, sending another young queen to the block. His final marriage to Catherine Parr reveals a man who was physically broken, chronically ill, and emotionally exhausted. He did not seek a romantic partner, but a nurse and a companion. Catherine was a sophisticated and intelligent woman who understood the precariousness of her position. Her role was to manage his tempestuous moods and agonizing medical ailments. Their relationship was far from peaceful. Henry once ordered her arrest for her reformist religious views, and she only saved herself by hastily submitting to his theological superiority. Her survival was not a matter of luck, but of skillful political maneuvering and emotional intelligence, proving that by the end of his reign, navigating Henry's court required not just virtue or beauty, but the sharp instincts of a survivor. King Henry VII's desperate quest for a male heir did not merely reshape his personal life. It fundamentally and irrevocably transformed England's religious identity, political structures, and very sovereignty. What began as a personal matter, the king's great matter of divorcing Catherine of Aragon, escalated into a constitutional revolution when the Pope refused to grant an annulment. Henry's response was audacious and unprecedented. Through a series of parliamentary acts in the 1530s, he systematically severed England's ties with the Roman Catholic Church, an institution that had dominated English life for nearly 1,000 years. The Act of Supremacy in 1534 was the crowning blow, declaring the king, not the Pope, to be the supreme head on earth of the Church of England. This was not initially a reformation of theology or doctrine. Henry remained a theological conservative who personally despised Protestant ideas. but a reformation of authority. It was a raw assertion of state power over the church, making the crown the ultimate arbiter of both spiritual and temporal matters. This transfer of power had immediate and profound consequences, most visibly in the dissolution of the monasteries. Under the direction of his minister, Thomas Cromwell, Henry ordered the systematic dismantling of hundreds of monastic houses. This was not merely a religious act, but the largest transfer of wealth and land in English history since the Norman conquest. The monasteries' vast estates were seized by the crown and sold off to the rising gentry and noble classes, creating a powerful new elite with a vested financial interest in supporting the break from Rome. This created a Tudor revolution in government, centralizing power and establishing the crown's absolute sovereignty. Furthermore, the break with Rome thrust England into the heart of the European Reformation, forcing it to define itself against both the Catholic powers of France and Spain and the rising Protestant states of Northern Europe. While Henry may have only intended to create a national Catholic church with himself at its head, the door was now open for genuine Protestant reform. The English Bible was authorized for use in churches, and Protestant ideas, once suppressed, began to take root. This seismic shift set the stage for the violent religious pendulum swings under his children. Edward V's Protestant zeal, Mary I's Catholic restoration, and Elizabeth I's pragmatic settlement, establishing a religious and national identity that was distinct, independent, and often at odds with the continent. The tumultuous succession of Henry VIII's 3 children stands as the ultimate embodiment of his contradictory and divisive legacy, a half-century of violent religious and political oscillation directly stemming from his marital history. His long-sought son, Edward V, who ascended the throne as a mere boy, inherited a kingdom his father had severed from Rome but had not made fully Protestant. Guided by fervent Protestant advisors, Edward's reign accelerated the Reformation with a radicalism his conservative father would have despised. The Book of Common Prayer was introduced, church altars were stripped, and traditional Catholic practices were outlawed, pushing England decisively toward a Protestant identity. This aggressive agenda, however, was cut short by Edward's premature death, which immediately triggered a crisis. In a final, desperate attempt to prevent a Catholic succession, his advisors attempted to crown his Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, but this move was swiftly crushed by the legitimate heir, Henry's eldest daughter, Mary I. Mary's accession was a direct restoration of the lineage of Catherine of Aragon, the wife Henry had cast aside. Her reign became a visceral attempt to avenge her mother and rectify her own declared illegitimacy by force. Driven by a profound Catholic piety and a strategic marriage to Spain's Prince Philip, Mary embarked on a brutal campaign to reverse the Reformation and return England to papal authority. Her persecution of Protestants, which saw nearly 300 individuals burned at the stake, earned her the enduring epithet, Bloody Mary, and seared her reign into national memory as a cautionary tale of religious tyranny. Her death without an heir in 1558, however, merely set the stage for the final, and most spectacular, act of the Tudor drama. The crown passed to Anne Boleyn's daughter, Elizabeth I, a figure whose very existence was a symbol of the break with Rome. Elizabeth inherited a kingdom bankrupt, demoralized, and bitterly divided by religion. Her genius lay in her pragmatic synthesis of her siblings' extremes. She rejected Mary's militant Catholicism, but did not fully embrace Edward's austere Protestantism. Instead, she engineered the Elizabethan religious settlement, a brilliantly ambiguous middle way that established the Church of England and made her its supreme governor, while allowing for a breadth of practice that could accommodate a broader swath of her subjects. This political masterstroke provided the stability that allowed England to flourish, ushering in an era of maritime exploration, cultural renaissance, and national confidence that defined her 45-year reign. Thus, the son for whom Henry had torn his country apart ruled for only 6 years, while the 2 daughters he had once declared bastards ultimately shaped England's destiny for generations. The story of Henry VIII and his 6 wives has achieved a remarkable and enduring presence in our collective imagination, transcending its origins as a 16th-century political drama to become a permanent fixture of global popular culture. This ongoing fascination stems from the powerful, universal themes woven throughout the narrative: the corrupting nature of absolute power, the dangerous intersection of love and politics, the brutal oppression of women in a patriarchal system, and the desperate human struggle for survival. The saga presents a cast of characters so richly drawn and psychologically complex that they feel almost Shakespearean, which indeed they inspired: the tragic monarch whose idealism curdles into tyranny, the wronged queen of unwavering principle, the ambitious reformer who becomes a victim of her own success, the virtuous mother sacrificed to biology, the political pawn who outsmarts the system, the youthful romantic destroyed by her passions, and the pragmatic intellectual who survives through wit. This timeless framework has proven endlessly adaptable, serving as a mirror for contemporary concerns and anxieties. Each generation finds new resonance in the story, reinterpreted through successive waves of literature, theater, television, and film. Modern productions like the television series The Tudors and the stage musical Six exemplify this evolution, reframing the narrative through a contemporary lens that explores issues of agency, sexuality, and female voice. The story provides a perfect scaffold for a political thriller, a chilling horror story of court intrigue, and a tragic romance, all contained within a compelling historical framework. The sheer drama of the events, the public trials, the secret liaisons, the shocking executions, ensures its status as a gripping human story, while its basis in documented history lends it a weight and credibility that pure fiction cannot match. This powerful combination of factual foundation and dramatic excess continues to captivate audiences, ensuring that the tumultuous lives and fates of Henry and his 6 queens remain as vivid and compelling today as they were 5 centuries ago, a testament to the story's profound exploration of the human condition under the shadow of absolute power. And so, the reign of Henry VIII closes not with a triumphant fanfare for a lasting dynasty, but with the haunting echo of a scaffold axe and the quiet wisdom of a survivor. He sought to command his legacy through the cry of a newborn son, but history instead remembers the silenced voices of 6 women and the profound truth they represent: that even the most absolute power cannot command love, cannot control fate, and cannot erase the human cost of a single, all-consuming obsession. His story endures as our ultimate cautionary tale, a chilling reminder that when a crown becomes a weapon, everyone, especially the one who wears it, becomes a victim.